Welcome in, guys. Doing a little bit of an impromptu session here with you all on this Thursday night. Gonna let some of you guys start to trickle in, so I'll just let it ride for a little bit, and then we'll kind of get into what I saw today at joint practices with the Jets. The morning started off a little rough. I got up 6:30 ish. Tried to head out by about 7:15. I'm in the Winston-Salem Triad area, so it takes about an hour to get down to Charlotte. And got on the road early. Um, Tried to fill up at the gas station before I hit the road on the 52. Gas pumps weren't working, so I said, "Fuck it, we'll ride this thing out until I get empty." And then we get on the highway, and about a mile down the road, there's a big ass backup, and I sat pretty much still in traffic on 52 for about 45 minutes. So it was about an hour setback when all was said and done. And I ended up still making practice on time. I got there around 9:20, and just made it in time. Met up with Keep Purring, Ben from Keep Purring podcast, and we marched on into the VIP section. But starting to see some folks trickle in here. Um, Zach Griffin, appreciate it. Appreciate you tuning in. Um, but yeah, let's just kind of get into it. And I just want to first start off with, once we got to the practice, place was packed, which I figured. Traffic was a little hectic getting in there. But I just want to shout out all the Panthers content creators right off the top. I was sitting by Dave and Rashad from PNP. Truly respect those guys and what they've done for this fan base. Again, like I said, Keep Purring podcast. Ben was there. I was sitting by him. Also, the guys at Two Fans in the Stands, very down to earth, great guys. And then Kevin Avery showed up as well for Four Man Rush. So all of those guys, it was good to see, and it was good to chop it up as practice was going on. I'll be honest with you guys, it was my first joint practice, and it is very overstimulating. There is a shit ton of stuff going on. It's really hard to keep up. I mean, they got, just to kind of describe it to y'all, if you haven't been, you got the offensive lineman, D line going at it. Then down on the field, you got Bryce going at it 7-on-7 with wide out as corners. And then over on the other side, you got Aaron Rodgers doing the same thing with 7-on-7, and then some guys working. So I mean, we were trying to kind of break everyone up into groups, but it's hard. Everyone wants to see what Bryce Young's doing. There were some guys watching defense. I know Kevin was watching the trenches too and stuff. So you were trying to bounce around a lot, and that's why it was tough. It's tough. It's tough to get content out there for you guys. We did our best we could. I kept joking with the guys with Two Fans in the Stands, and I mean, they were sniping out there. These people that were working for the Panther security, they were tight on, no videos. We did our best at what we could to try to give you guys a little bit of content, but man, they were on it. They kept they had their eye. They never ended up catching any of us, but they had their eye on those stands for a while. So but yeah, just initial reaction to practice right off the jump is we showed up. We really showed up for this joint practice in Charlotte. A much different story from last year and what was reported. I didn't go to Spartanburg for the one last year. Like I said, this was my first one, but man, I know we talked about it last night on the show with JJ, and our concerns of Panthers getting bullied, and the Jets kind of making a joke out of us this past year in Spartanburg, and that was not the case today at all. So whatever you're reading online, whatever you're seeing online, Carolina showed up, and they made some plays on both sides of the ball. Now, that wasn't always pretty. I mean, there's room for improvement, and I'll talk about that as we go here. But man, was there some, plays where you're like, damn, this is awesome. I'm pumped for the season. I'm ready to roll. So I'll start offensively. because that was really my main focus with this practice. And um, TMJ, man, the TMJ that showed up today can feed families. I mean, it was for real. It really was. We've seen a lot of bits and pieces of him throughout training camp, and today you saw it on display against another team, which was really exciting. Now I want to see it into a preseason game. I know we talked about that last night when he had that drop in the Patriots game, but going up against guys like Sauce and some of their corners, and he held his own right off the jump. I mean, he was ready to show out and show Canales and this new staff like, I'm here to stay. And it was early on in teams. I'm sure you guys have seen the video by now. I'm going to try to pull it up here if I can get it. But he had one of the first plays in team in the red zone, which they did pretty early on. He had a really nice grab. I think it was almost back-to-back touchdowns. So I'm going to try to share my screen here with you guys a little bit and see if we can pull this up. So this was, like I said, pretty early on in team. You can kind of see him off here to the left. And Bryce, throws a perfect fade pass. Appreciate the guy standing in front of the shot from me, from my shot. But yeah, he's doing the gritty. It was good stuff. He's had, he's gotten open before, and it's always, can he come down with the ball? And he proved it here. Clean pocket for Bryce for the most part. As we watch this over again, but look at that pocket. You see the guy coming around Icky, but that pocket is clean for Bryce. He's got a good look. TMJ's open. Looks like Sauce, and I don't know who 22 is on the Jets defense, but easy grab for a TMJ there. And you had one a couple plays later as well that he made, and I was pissed off that I missed it because we were right there for it. I was just getting nervous. So like I said, they had the snipers out for us at that practice. But he made a play very similar, a way better catch. Honestly, it was contested. He kind of dove to the ground, caught it. And then that's the play where you see the first squabble. So I do have video of that. I caught the tail end of it. And it really started. So TMJ caught the ball, and he took it and he chucked it at the DB after he scored, which we all saw by now that Dave Canales comment. It was a dumb football move, I think was the quote. But you kind of see the tail. You see he chucks the ball at Chuba, and then it starts a whole other confrontation on the side. So this was kind of the first fight of practice. But yeah, just TMJ, you don't like the penalty because obviously he's gonna get flagged for this. But the dude was a dog out there today. He really was, and I hope it shows up in games. I really do, because I think he's gonna add another element to this team. And God forbid Deontay Johnson wasn't even out there today. I mean, and Xavier Legette, which is ridiculous how well the offense looked with both of those guys out, two of the big additions from last year. So that was kind of the fight, the first one. I believe there was 3 altogether when all was said and done. But TMJ really had a nice day. He had those 2 fade balls. We didn't see a lot of fades. I know they tried to run maybe 1 or 2 maybe last year, and I think it involved TMJ if I'm saying that right, or from what I viewed. But yeah, to see this early on and to see this in Canales' offense is good to see, because I think he adds an element to that. And I also think Legette is a guy you can do that with as well. And he kind of filled that void today with Legette. He was at practice, but he really didn't participate really in team drills at all. So they're slowly trying to bring him along. But yeah, TMJ deserves his flowers without a doubt. I appreciate you guys in the chat. Keep it coming. Zach Griffin here with TMJ's got to be a lack of focus sometimes. I would agree with that. I also think sometimes too the guy, granted he did get an opportunity in this past preseason game, but the guy hasn't gotten a ton of opportunities. And I mean, obviously that was huge last year. Frank Reich he didn't want any part of him at all, and I don't think he wanted any part of Frank Reich either. But I really hope this year he kind of shows out. And I mean, it was awesome to see today because it was there was from the previous couple of days where you saw the picks on the timelines with Bryce Young and the interceptions these last couple of days. It was good to finally get a solid day out of the offense against another team, because they're going up against the Panthers defense day in and day out at training camp. It kind of gets stagnant. They kind of know what's coming at points. And now you finally get a fresh look against a fresh defense that you haven't faced with this new squad and new offense. And they came to play today, which was good. So TMJ definitely showed out. He had a couple other catches throughout practice as well. Just trying to look at my notes here. Jonathan Mingo, another guy who I thought, he's had a really good training camp. We all know the story in the backstory. Panthers.com did a really good piece on him from one of their writers, just about, how he reached out to Steve Smith in the offseason and wanted to work with him. And if you haven't gotten to read that article yet, it's a really good one. But yeah, Jonathan Mingo today, I'll pull up the highlight that I captured. I want to say it was kind of middle of practice. Once they kind of got out of red zone team 11 on 11. And he had a really nice crosser. And I know everyone's talking about the deep shots. This wasn't a streak. But it was a pretty nice play. And I'll just share the screen here. And Rashad and Doug getting a little excited there. Almost blocked my shot. I somehow snuck it in there. But yeah, you could see on the outpost a really nice play by Mingo. He looks pretty open on it too. And I saw someone share that on Twitter today, and I thought that was interesting. I might have been Monty of just, we don't know if it's the Canales' offense and, him getting guys open and how he's designing these plays, or I think it could be a combination of both of what they're running, but just a really nice play by Mingo here. And catches it, keeps it with his body as well, because we saw that last week too. Besides TMJ, he had the drop. So I'm really hoping if he does get some playing time in this next preseason game, we're going to see him come down with some plays too once the lights come on as well. But really nice play here by Mingo. And we've seen a lot of that in camp already. So you're seeing it, over and over again. And it's not just a bit here and a bit there. It's consistent with Mingo right now, which is good. So yeah, he had a really nice play. For those who want to see the streaks, we did get to see one today. Keep on your radar, David Moore. I think that guy is making a name for himself. He's got some familiarity working with Dave Canales in Seattle, and then obviously also in Tampa last year. He played a little bit down the stretch. If he doesn't make the team, I think 100% he's on the practice squad unless someone scoops him up, which I'm not sure they would. But I do think this guy could carve out a role for this team. But yeah, he had a streak. It was very early on in practice. I think it was on 7-on-7. And I don't know if he ran a double move. I can't remember exactly, but Bryce had him streaking down the sideline, and Bryce threw it right in. I think Panthers actually.com shared it on their Twitter account, the catch he had. So for those who want the deep plays, Bryce connected on one today. I think that there was a nice crosser there that I just showed you guys from Mingo as well. So just a really nice job from David Moore. Another guy that comes to mind was Adam Thielen. He had I think it was on a comeback against Sauce today. Bryce, I don't think many guys were open, and he was kind of looking around, rolled out, and then found Thielen, his safety blanket, I guess, per se today, and made a nice play there. That was another chunk one. I'm trying to think again more offensively. If you're going to talk about offensive line, I thought the offensive line had some decent plays, kind of like what I showed you on that TMJ one. That was a really nice pocket for Bryce. I thought Corbett looked pretty good. I was talking with the guys from Two Fans. We were talking, and they were keeping an eye on Corbett and just one-on-ones. Now, granted, Quinnen Williams was not playing today, and that's a pretty big component of that D-line for the Jets. But Corbett, I thought, looked good in his one-on-ones. I thought Icky had some good looks as well. Zavala, I thought he got beat on one or two. I thought Robert Hunt held his own, and we'll talk about Robert Hunt here a little bit too. And then I thought Taylor Moton had some good adjustments when I thought he was going to get beat on a couple of the pass rushes just on 1v1. So I think that line's working. I think the big question mark is what is, Damian Lewis going to give us? He wasn't practicing today. He's out there, but he wasn't going in on these plays. Zavala filled in for him until he got injured. And then once Zavala went down, it was Christensen backing him up. So that's just keep that in mind as we get into the season and injuries start happening, because they're going to happen somewhere. And what's up, Doug? Glad you chimed into the chat. It was really good to see you guys today, and get to experience a little hope for Carolina today with the Jets practice. But yeah, I thought the offensive line, there was, some good plays and some bad plays. And there was a couple times where Bryce did get sacked and they just, blew the play dead. Obviously he's not getting hit, but there was a couple times where there was some definite sacks against that, first team offense and the starters. Going to Robert Hunt. I know you guys saw today, he got carted off. Early on, it sounded like it was just precautionary with I think it was his knee. Hopefully I have that right. Yeah, they tested out his knee. He ended up coming back, which was a good sign because, you look at it, if Robert Hunt goes down and we got Damian Lewis, who's still trying to condition after his, whatever he had with his personal leave when he was out for personal reasons. Not going to get into that. Not going to hate the guy for that, but he's still coming back from that. We don't know what we're going to get out of him when he's healthy. And, Robert Hunt goes down. You're looking at, Zavala, it sounds like he's going to be out for some time. And you're looking at Christensen at guard right now. I know Carolina signed a guy today, but we're getting into that, holy shit, we're back to where we were last year type stuff. So Panthers cannot lose Robert Hunt. He was the big ticket item this offseason. They invested a shit ton of money in him. They invested a lot in Damian Lewis. Many say they overpaid for Damian Lewis. Some say they even overpaid for Robert Hunt. Whatever the case is, those guys need to be on the field no matter what. So that was a scare. There was some tension there for a little while, but once we saw Robert Hunt come back, that kind of eased some of the concerns a little bit. But something to keep in mind. I hope they don't try to rush him at all. That guy needs to be ready week one, no matter what. So, and then, like I said, the Zavala injury, he went off on a cart, and it sounds like it's a hamstring, and it's going to be a longer timeout for him from what Canales said this afternoon. I wanted to show you guys this play, if I can pull it up, because I thought I saw what I saw, and then I looked back and I'm like, sure shit. I've noticed they're running, or they're at least practicing some trick plays and misdirection plays that we didn't get to see much with Frank Reich. And I noticed this, I think it was pretty early on in. Just trying to make sure I have the play right. Here it is. So let's watch this one, and you got to look real close. This one's kind of hard to see, but if you watch, I think it's Boone. I think Boone's 34. And we're going to talk about him in a little bit, but Mike Boone is out here wide. I think that's JT Sanders. I'm not sure who's in the backfield. But if you watch this through, Bryce is going to toss it to the back here, and then the back's going to hand it off to Boone, who's coming in on a motion. You didn't see this very often. Now, the Jets sniffed it out. It ended up not working out, but I'm wondering if they're going to come back to this in the season. And I think, if you add in, probably early on Chuba and Sanders, and then when you get, Brooks back, this play I thought was interesting. We'll just watch it through here. And now 21 up here, he sniffs it out like he knew it was coming. But when you catch a defense off guard with this and you get a wideout out here that can block, a guy like Lee Gett, who's a bigger dude, it can seal that edge for you. I mean, this could be a pretty big play moving forward. And we've seen the flea flickers in training camp already. So this is just one to store away, keep it in your mind. This is what kind of excites me about what Canales is doing with this offense, because you're starting to see some of the, wrinkles he can, put into the playbook. And we didn't get that. I mean, we all know the vanilla offense that Frank Reich, the dog shit offense, let's be blunt about it, that Frank Reich rolled out with. I mean, I think we saw a little bit of misdirection with Thomas Brown, and then once Frank Reich took the playbook in training camp, it was pitiful. But that's kind of the glimpses you're slowly seeing it within training camp. They'll probably not do a whole lot with it in preseason, but just something to keep in mind. The one thing I was curious about, and I didn't see much of it, and this was one of the things, and it kind of just goes back to this last 7 years, really, with this team. There was not a ton of action from the tight ends today. And we saw a lot of that in preseason. Obviously, the starters weren't in, but, Jordan Matthews got a lot of reps. But there wasn't a lot of targets to those guys today at all. I don't remember too many. I know I think JT Sanders had maybe 1 or 2 catches in the game. But the play, there was no tight end, they weren't existent really much. And I might have missed some things, but it's just like, man, like I want to see that. And that's been a missing piece to this offense. And I've been hearing, and I'll don't want to go down a rabbit hole of this for folks who've listened to us before, but like I've been hearing for years, Tremble's going to show out. And I've been hearing, the Ian Thomas's fans of the world, and I don't think there's many, but these guys really haven't shown up, and I thought we maybe see a little bit more of that today, because Jordan Matthews has been heavily involved, but you didn't see a whole lot of that. So that was kind of disappointing. Bryson, talking about concerns. I've talked so negatively about this team. I had to start with the positive. So I have concerns with the offensive line. There's no doubt about it. The depth across the board at that position scares the hell out of me. Because there was points in practice today where the guards got beat and Bryce Young got swallowed up. And there was a couple runs that got swallowed up when guys like Robert Hunt weren't out there. And if those guys go down and you have Icky and Damian Lewis can't, his availability, he's not there. And you have, someone alongside Icky, whether it's Christensen or Zavala when he comes back, or one of these guys they're bringing in off the streets right now, that one of the guys they signed today, that concerns me. And like I said, that tight end group, you didn't see a whole lot of that today out of that group. I thought Bryce was pretty on point today. There's no doubt about it. I thought he had a really good practice. I've been to 4 practices, I believe, this training camp, and that was the best I've seen him in the 4 practices I was there. He took shots that I think he's getting more comfortable at taking some of these shots. He was precise. He was quick and with his decisions. It wasn't a lot of legging in the pocket and then getting it out. Um, and I want to say Bryce, and I'm trying to think. He might have had, I want to say he had at least one interception. I think it was 7-on-7 um, early on in practice. He rolled out, and I think he threw it right to the guy. And I don't remember who it was in coverage, but he did have an interception in 7-on-7 pretty early on. But after that, he looked clean. I don't know if he had another one after that. Um, he maybe had a one or two that were tipped. But for the most part, it was a pretty clean day from him. Um, Now going defense here. So obviously, most of my effort was focused on the offense, but I did, like I said, when the offense was huddling up, I look over and watch some of the first team against A Rod. J.C. Horn was on a snap count today, so you didn't see a whole lot of him out there in team. You did a couple times, and J.C. The defense was playing far away from us, so I didn't get to take many videos. I was pissed. I saw the Trevin Wallace pick, and I was really upset that I didn't get that on video. But I thought J.C. Horn, when I caught a glimpse of him in coverage, he had Malachi Corley strapped down on one of the plays that I got a glimpse of. Um, but defensively, I thought at times they struggled getting pressure, and Aaron Rodgers had time in the pocket. There was one play I saw in particular where we got some pressure, and again, Clowney didn't play today, so that's a big piece. You got DJ Johnson, Ike Leota is your two starters really, with all the injuries right now with that group, and Leota had a nice pressure early on, but Aaron Rodgers makes plays. He got the ball off, but Leota was coming off the edge. And so that kind of sucked. There wasn't too much pressure on that team. Um, and then, like I said, I think a big part of this secondary without JC Horn, it's so hard to evaluate. Like, if it kind of gave me a glimpse, if JC does go down in the season, we're in trouble. We're in trouble. There's no doubt about it. Like, watching some of these backup guys, and they had glimpses. Like I said, there was positives and negatives on both sides. I thought Jameson had a really nice play. I believe he had a pick. I can't remember if it was off of Aaron Rodgers or not. There was some discrepancy there, but he had an interception, but then he gave up a big play. And then he had a flag on team in scrimmage. They had a scrimmage towards the end of practice. And Rodgers, I think, threw a bomb to Wilson, and Jameson was in coverage on the streak, and right at the end, and I don't even know if the ball was in reach of Wilson, and Jameson basically just pulled him to the ground, and it was a flag. PI set him up, 1st and goal. I mean, it was like a 40-yard penalty. So, like, that's the stuff that concerns me. And Rodgers, when I would glance over, he was picking apart that defense on several times. But then there was also plays, like I said, Trevin Wallace. He had a really nice pick on Rodgers. I don't know what Rodgers saw. I don't know if he didn't see Wallace. He was kind of towards the hash marks on the right side and threw it. He jumped up, picked it off, and took it to the house on a pick. So he had a really nice play. But yeah, the corner depth concerns me. I thought Lamar Jackson, I felt like he took a step back from that preseason game. There was a couple of times where I saw them picking on 31 on some pass plays. And then Shi Smith-Wade, I think it was hard to tell. There was a pass that I think he had an interception on, but those numbers, some of those guys wear their jerseys up so high, it's so hard to read sometimes. So it was either him or Jameson had an interception. So I think it was him. He made a decent play on one of the throws, and I don't know if it was against Aaron Rodgers, but then there was a couple plays later, Smith-Wade gave up a deep ball. So again, it was just a lot of, there was a one step forward, a couple steps back. But I want to say this, because I don't think it was an awful day by the defense. There was a couple times where Aaron Rodgers, came back to the huddle shaking his head because he was pissed off, and he had some, plays that Carolina got the best of him at. So I do think that kind of shows some promise. And I know there was a couple times where when the Jets were running the ball, there was I saw again glimpses, and it's so hard to see from when we're so far away. I don't know who was in on it, but there was a couple times when they ran the ball and Carolina stuffed them. So you're kind of seeing when everyone's talking about Carolina is going to be better at stopping the run this year. You could see that a little bit with some of the interior runs. Now there was some other plays where the backs were on these, outlet plays. They were making Carolina look stupid on some of these in the flats and off to the sidelines. And, they're catching the ball and they're making 10, 15-yard plays out of it. So that, again, there was Clowney out, JC out. Like those are two big guys. Xavier Woods out. Xavier Woods is a big part of this defense. And I don't think people will give him enough credit. So you have like three of those guys at each level of the defense out. I think it would have been a different story if you'd have seen J.C. Horn in there all the time with the ones, and I think it would have been a different story if you saw Clowney in there. I think we would honestly got pressure. We all know what Clowney has done this preseason, and I don't think the Jets have invested in that offensive line, but I do think there's some holes there. So it would have been nice to see some of those guys in there and gave some of these guys some other avenues to work off of. I'm trying to think about linebackers. I didn't pay too close attention when I did to some of those guys, so it was hard to tell. Shaq Thompson was out there again, so I don't know how much he was moving around. I did see Josie Jewell on a couple plays. But again, Aaron Rodgers, the guy's a Hall of Famer for a reason. Like, he was making plays, but Carolina made some plays as well, and they got a couple picks on him. And with Bryson, you bring up Dane Jackson, like, Carolina is going to have to add someone in that room. And I know they like Boodle. I know they like Jameson, but that group concerns me. I mean, we're a J.C. Horn injury away from having Jameson, Boodle, and Troy Hill as the starters. Like, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that, especially with some of the wide receivers, the NFC South has. I mean, that's a tough task, and that's going to be a tough pill to swallow when we're going up against some of those teams. So I think Carolina does need to add a DB to that room without a doubt. I know that Guy Gilmore is still without a team. I know there's Jackson as well. Adoree Jackson still available, I believe. So, there's some guys out there that Carolina can go get. And I'm just trying to search that quickly while I'm talking to you guys all here with some of these free agents. Yeah, so Adoree Jackson still available. See if I can find this quickly. And I can't find this list, but I know there's guys out there. I think Xavier Howard is still out there, but I think Gilmore is like the obvious everyone wants. He was at South Carolina. He's got the connection to Clowney. Dan Morgan and him are neighbors. Like, it makes sense. It's just, can Carolina afford him? I will say there was a guy, and this guy has come up. I think he picked off Bryce Young a couple times. One of the bright spots again, it was against, I think, second or third team. It was the last play of joint practices, but Damani Richardson had a nice day, or a nice pick towards the end of practice. Didn't get it on video, but it was okay. So I tweeted this out. It was against Tyrod Taylor, and that kind of wrapped up practice. But that's his third pick in like a couple days. So that guy's kind of shown up a little bit. So that is promising. But I think without a doubt, Carolina needs to add a corner. And hopefully it's some big name. And maybe a team waives someone that we can go pick up. And, Carolina has been pretty aggressive with that waiver wire, with them having the number one for the first couple weeks of the season. So, maybe they can find, a hidden gem in there. But yeah, Dane Jackson going out and him supposed to be the number two is not ideal. And there was already concern with him as the starter and the depth with that room And now you're sitting there looking at, no Dane Jackson, J.C. Horn, who hasn't played a full season yet in his NFL career. And then, some guys who have built up um, their catalog on defense. But, at the end of the day, it's going to be tough when they're out there full time starting week in and week out. Like, these guys are good for plug and play and bringing them in every once in a while, but I don't know if I feel comfortable with those guys going out for, 40 to 50 snaps and trying to hold their own against some of the top wideouts in the league. That concerns the hell out of me. So I think without a doubt, most of you guys in the chat, if you're here and you're still listening, is the depth on this team it's not good at all. And they need to build that up quickly over these next couple of years, because, it's bare bones behind the starters. And when one guy goes down, it messes the whole thing up. Like I thought today with Deontay Johnson out, it was going to be a mess. They obviously proved otherwise, and guys stepped up, and that needs to continue. But there's a lot of positions where you can look at and say, if that guy goes down, we're fucked. And that's just the reality of it. So that is the biggest concern, I think, across the board. Wanted to jump back real quickly to the offense because I mentioned this guy, and maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm just telling you my observations. What I've seen the last couple of practices is Mike Boone is getting a ton of playing time. And I don't know if that's intentional to see what this guy's got and they know what they have in Blackshear. But he was getting returns. He got a couple returns today. I think actually he took one to the house on one of his returns today, and he's getting a lot of looks in the backfield. You do not see Blackshear out there very often getting running back looks in the offense. So I would watch Mike Boone again. It might be a long shot for him to make the team, but I would not be overly shocked if we're looking at, Blackshear as a possible not making it. Maybe I'm nuts. Maybe I'm crazy by saying that, but I just see it. It seems odd that this guy has not gotten any looks on offense. And now Boone, he had a nice play today with special teams. So we'll see what happens. Maybe there's nothing to it. And maybe, again, they're just trying to see what Boone has because they know what they have in Blackshear. And Dan Morgan has been around and knows, obviously Canales hasn't, but like Dan knows what he has in Blackshear. That's just one to watch. Maybe I'm reading into it, but wanted to throw that out there. But overall, I thought Carolina, today gave me some glimmer of hope for this team of offensively. I thought they had a day and one to build off of, and they got to keep that going. It's not, you can't just have a good day and then you come back and have you got to build off and stack those good days together. So I hope they do that. I'm not sure who is going to play offensively or who's going to play defensively starter-wise in this game. It sounds like, there's a lot of guys banged up, just going through some of the injuries. Chuba Hubbard, I didn't even talk about him. I'm glad that came to mind. I'm glad I wrote him down. He got banged up today. It sounded like it was a knee. I thought maybe it'd be a concussion because the guy, it looked like, got depleted, like completely blown up. But, Canales watched the tape back. It sounds like he slid and then the guy hit him. So it just kind of looked worse than what it was. But, he got injured and he's supposed to be the number one back until Brooks comes back. So that's going to be one to monitor. It sounded like they tested out his knee and, everything came back, but, they're obviously going to get a second look at him. So that, he's one to watch. Xavier Woods, not ideal. He's out a couple of weeks. I don't know the full timeline on that, but that's one to watch as well. And then Dane Jackson, obviously, he's got a significant, I believe it was a hamstring injury. Don't quote me on that one. I know it's a significant out 6 weeks. So just one to watch. But yeah, that was kind of my, through my lens of what I saw today. It gave me hope. I had one of my coworkers who works for our sports department text me today. He said that was Bryce Young's best day out there. And, he's been to several practices. So it's good to see that. It was good to see Carolina. There was not a lot of Jets jerseys. I know, Spartanburg, the hill there, it was filled at Wofford with some Jets fans, last year and you didn't see, I mean, there was a couple, and I get it. We were in the VIP section, so it's obviously harder for those fans to get those. But even across, where the general mission was, you did not see a lot of green, which was good. I was happy about that because we all know the stigma around Carolina and fans filling up the stadium, opposing team fans, that is. So that was good to see. But at this point, I'm rambling. I just wanted to give you guys, folks who didn't get to see practice today, I tried to get some videos out to you guys. Give all the guys that I mentioned, all the content creators, follows that were there as well. They put out some stuff too, and it was just good to talk football with some of those guys that are trying to put out content for everyone. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll try to do this a little bit more every now and then with doing some lives after games, and obviously training camps wrapping up now. But just wanted to give you guys a perspective, and we do appreciate it. Please subscribe to our YouTube page if you don't already, and follow us on Twitter. And then we'll see you guys later, and keep pounding.